good model. Certainly, a little bit of being in the right place at the right time. There was a ton of growth at that time in the industry in both REO and in valuations, and we kind of used that kind of that springboard to get into our additional product lines. So, because we came from outside the industry back in 2004, I mean, 20 years later, this is our industry. This is what I've done, most of my life at this point. But back then, we kind of didn't know what we didn't know. So we started, managing the REO process, and then, as agents, you guys would work so hard, to get these properties marketed, to get them sold. It would go under contract, and then we would lose some control again because it would go to an outside title company. So we started saying, geez, why don't we? Because our business partner Brian had a title company, we said, why don't we start getting licensed to do title in the states where we're seeing a lot of REO. That way, it gives us more control over the process from start to finish for our clients to try to make it as seamless for them. So we started as a title agent around 2006. Currently, we're licensed in about 36 states, but obviously handle title coast to coast for clients through title partners if it's a state where we're not licensed. And then around the same time, we also started doing field services work. So some of our clients then would have, you, the agent, get somebody to cut the grass, and then you would send us an expense report and we'd reimburse you. Other clients used other national providers, and we really wanted to target that segment where the national providers were providing service. And again, as the asset management company, we were accountable to get it done. We had to indemnify our clients, meaning if something went wrong, we were the ones cutting the checks. So we said, why don't we start doing this ourselves? So that's how we got into field services. And here we are, 20 years later, and we have, 4 really kind of independent, mature product lines at this point. So we do REO asset management nationally. We do valuation products nationally, which includes appraisals and broker price opinions, as well as some hybrid products. We do title work. So we sometimes will handle the closing if it's an REO property we sell. And we also have clients like Freedom Mortgage, for example, which is one of the largest mortgage originators in the country right now. And we do a lot of refinance and origination work with them as well. And then field services, we do, for some clients, we'll do the trash outs and lawn care associated with selling an REO asset. But then we also have clients like Fannie Mae, Mr. Cooper, Shell Point, where we do just the field services. So, having that model certainly has, served us well. I think for anybody who's been in the industry for, even 10, 20 years or more, I'm sure some of you have been, there's been a lot of ups and downs, right? There was an REO boom in the 2000s. And then 2009 or so, I think we saw the first foreclosure moratoriums that really impacted that. And I think, for single source, that was always the vision, to kind of be a single point of contact for our clients. And it really helped us through some of those moratoriums and other things that went on that we saw going on in REO. By having the different product lines, it really helped us stay balanced. So, when I think back, who did we compete with in 2004, 2005? A lot of those companies are gone. There's still a couple that are around, but a lot of them, couldn't survive through some of those REOs ups and downs. And we really were able to, because of our product balance and the different things that we do, that keeps us healthy even during the toughest of times. The one, so that's kind of a benefit, I guess, to single source of all the things we do. One of the negatives of having different product lines is sometimes, there's multiple priorities, there's multiple fronts where we have to focus. So, for example, if we have to manage technology for 4 different products, not just one. We have to deal with 4 times the number of clients, because a lot of times a client will only purchase, from one segment. So one of the things that was attractive to us about ADR back in 2008, 2009 was, we always, our original vision was we really wanted to be kind of the partner of choice for the people in the field, meaning you guys, right? And because we had to sometimes, because of the product, kind of the bandwidth we needed to manage these multiple products, we couldn't always do that. And so part of what ADR provided for us, in addition to being our broker of record, was it allowed us to have a closer connection to the people actually performing the work. Because most of our work that we do, and I can say all of our customer contracts right now, there's no guarantee, right? We don't have a contract that says Fannie Mae is going to send us X million dollars of business a year. We have to perform every month, every quarter, or we're at risk to do that. And we can't do that without you. And I think we wanted to have the balance of different product lines, but also have a better connection to the people doing the work. And we saw ADR as a great opportunity to do that. And then as time went on, we also knew that ADR was a commitment for you as the agent as well. And we wanted to make sure Darren was providing additional benefit to you as well. And I know one of the things that we found over the years was there were certain clients of single source that wanted to work with an REO outsourcer like us. And then there's other clients that maybe had their own internal department, and they would almost see us as like a competitor. So what that allows us to do is when we come across those situations, maybe we do field services at a client where we're doing the trash outs and winterizations and lawn care, but they have their own internal asset group. What we try to do is get Darren introduced and his team to try to do whatever we can to support ADR, because we know it's a commitment on your end, and we want to make sure that the benefit you're getting from ADR goes beyond single source. And that's really been the case, probably going back, Darren, 7 or 10 years. I think in the 2000s, we had the majority of the assets, but at some point it overturned where ADR had more assets in single source, and that's pretty much been the status quo for some time. So that's kind of the genesis of single source and how we started working with ADR.
Yeah, that's a great intro. I wasn't even really aware of all that. And just as I'm going to turn things over to Darren a little bit here to ask some questions. But if you guys have questions that are coming up or you're thinking about, put them in the chat. And then Emily is helping me out today with that. And then if we have some time at the end, we'll open mic so we can ask questions that way as well. So I wanted to just go ahead and ask Darren if there's maybe some questions that you could target towards Brian that maybe you were thinking of, or maybe you think the other agents might be thinking about right now.
Well, yeah, and I guess tapping into the audience that we have today, right, Brian, are these agents that are going out of their way, and you know how we look at it on our point of view and your point of view as well, is they go over and above to do these kind of exercises, right, to be involved, learn more, to be more valuable is how I kind of phrase it. But one of the questions I guess would be pertinent from them is, what are some things that they can do as an agent to be able to be a better partner for single source?
Sure. Well, there's sorry, my light went off there. Yeah, and just to follow up, one other thing I wanted to mention just as part of the intro, and it'll kind of lead into what they can do to help us, right? And which obviously, if you're performing well for us, you make our job easier. It makes it really easy for us to communicate to Darren on who we want getting that asset in that area. We have really, one of the benefits of single source is that we've had really long-standing relationships. So some of our clients go back to our initial year. So for example, one of our largest clients is Goldman Sachs. We started work with them in 2004. Another one is Bank of America. We don't do as much work with them anymore, but that was a national city, became Bank of America. So we've been a vendor there for 20 years. And that's through all the real estate cycles. And that's through all the decision maker changes they had. And that really comes down to the work that the agents do in the field, making sure we're providing, consistent service over time, right? And one of the biggest things that our customers look for really is just information, right? They want to know, that the agents that are working their properties are on task and know what's going on. They understand it's REO. I think, especially now, even more so than 20 years ago. I think 20 years ago, there was a different kind of vendor management. I guess there's some different vendor management personalities we dealt with. Some of the larger servicing companies where, it was kind of their way or the highway. They didn't want to hear about exceptions. They didn't want to hear about why something didn't get done. They just wanted it done. Where now our clients are more realistic. They understand that REO is complex. They understand, especially now post-COVID, that a lot of the properties we're getting have been vacant for extended periods of time, or in a lot of cases too, they're more rural. So we're seeing properties with more trash. We're seeing properties with more squatters. They understand that what we're dealing with are not, typical vacant properties. So the number, if you were going to say what can they do what's a key for them for a partnership with us, probably the number one thing is just full transparency, even on delays and issues. The one thing that when I talked to our REO team here before this call, the one thing they said was that all news is good news, meaning that if there's a problem, as long as we know and we can let the client know, everything's going to be fine. We'll figure out a solution. We'll work through it, and we'll figure out what to do. So I would say the number one thing is, full transparency, and make sure you're communicating, even if it's a message you don't necessarily want to deliver because you're worried about what the response will be. I'll tell you, at least for our staff here, we were able to retain some really good staff over COVID because of the different product lines. We move people around. So the asset managers you're dealing with at Single Source have all been doing this a long time. Some of them date back to our original clients in 2004. Others have been here since 2006, 2009. So these are people that that have kind of been through it, and they understand that REO can be complex. So as long as they get the message and they can translate that to the client, there's usually, we can usually overcome any issue. The other thing I would say is, a lot of the properties do follow a pretty normal, timeline or trajectory, but I would say always make sure that you're making your case, whether it's for a price reduction or for an offer that you should be accepted. Always make your case on why we should accept the reduction and accept the offer if you think we should, even if it's a no, because a lot of times, we'll get guidelines on how we can list a property or how we can do a reduction, and we need that information from you to build the case to get the reduction that we really need at some point. Sometimes we can get just as frustrated as I'm sure you can with decisions that are made. We have some delegated authority, but probably sometimes less than you may think. So by giving us information, even if it's a no, at the end of the day, it's helping, building the case to try to get a better outcome in the future. So I'd say those are the three things: transparency, communicate the good and bad news, and make your case when things come up.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I can add to that when we get called into the mix as towards a reassignment or jumping into what we call an exception, right? Because we work through exception management, meaning that when things are going great, everybody's being fully transparent and communicating, typically there's no problems. Problems arise when things aren't getting done, turnaround times aren't being hit, people start communicating. And that's when our clients reach out to us and say, hey, by the way, ABC Realtor and this jurisdiction is not responding. And then we have to jump in. That's never a good thing. So to Brian's point, I mean, it's all about transparency. No news is not good news. You gotta relay it, whatever it is. If it's good or bad, just make sure you communicate, over communicate. It's what we try to do. So that's fantastic. I wanted to ask you a little bit. I mean, the PPI came out this morning, a little hotter, 0.6. the marketplace, like what's the future looking like, I guess, is the bigger question in the industry. Of course, through COVID and through the last couple of years of pretty much no REO in the space. Everybody on this call does REO. So it's everybody's wondering, okay, when? And we've had conversations over the last 3 years. Oh, it's supposed to be next summer, it's supposed to be next fall, it's supposed to be next spring. And I know right now with gold prices at all-time highs, with unemployment right now, they pretty hang their hat, I think, on the unemployment rate. But I think we all know that that's a little smoke and mirrors with part-time jobs. I heard this morning the repos on cars are at the highest level ever. They're definitely peaking right now. Credit card debts are higher than highest ever. So a lot of things are indicating that this cycle is about to flip, and there's going to be some kind of activity when it comes into the space that we're in. And but anyway, I want to get your insights. I think it'd be interesting to tap into what your thoughts are on where we are 6 months, 1 year, 2 years from now, and a little bit about like where we've been maybe in the marketplace.
Sure. I don't know if I want to go back to where we've been, meaning COVID.
I don't blame you.
But it's we definitely get those are questions we get asked a lot. Our customer outlook has changed over the years. In the past, there were really large loan servicing companies that directed a lot of REO, whether it was Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo. Those banks have really kind of shed their portfolios to pretty large degree. I think single source was, we benefited that we did even pre-COVID have a little bit of a niche with reverse mortgages. So if anybody gets files from us for a client like C-Link, for example, those are reverse mortgage loans, or in the past they would have been through NationStar or First Horizon. Those have ticked up a little bit. With it being an election year, that there definitely generally are things that happen to try to spur the economy a little bit. We're not sure what's going to happen with interest rates, but we do get projections from our clients. The one that I probably look at the most is Fannie Mae, just because I think they're a pretty good bellwether for what's going on out there. And their REO inventory from Q4 2022 to Q4 2023 actually went down by just a little bit. And we don't do REO work there. We do field services work. So we do get a good sense of how many new REO that they're putting out there. And it's been very stagnant. It's been actually a little bit shockingly low. So I think there is some pressure to keep properties in the delinquent category versus foreclosure. And then, the other insight we have is that, we do a lot of property inspections. So once in our field services department, as soon as somebody goes, in some cases, 45 days delinquent, they'll order an inspection from us. We'll go to the inspection and we'll continue to inspect it until it becomes vacant. And then we'll secure it. And that typically starts it down, the cycle to foreclosure. One of the things we used to see in that part of the business was we would see typically around a 10% vacancy rate, which means if we got 100 inspections, 10 would be vacant, and then those would move towards foreclosure. That 10% wouldn't hit REO. Maybe it'd be more like 4 or 5% by the time bankruptcy happens, somebody becomes current, there's some sort of loan workout, right? But what we're seeing now is historically low vacancy rates, like 3-4%, which to a lot of people, it's hard to make sense of it. But I think people are just staying in their homes longer. There's more workout programs available. And I think some people are hanging on, wondering if there'll be another form of, government help to keep them in their home. And then you tack on top of that, some of the jurisdictions, it becomes very difficult to foreclose and evict, that the loan servicing companies are doing anything they can to make sure it doesn't go to REO, because they know that that's not a great path right now. I think that has to change over the next couple of years. just because of a lot of the factors you mentioned, Darren. But we do get projections from our clients. And, if you look at, Fannie Mae, maybe they have 10,000 REO, and they're probably 15-20% of the market. So in the fourth quarter last year, I think there were 50,000 REO acquisitions. But if you looked at what the industry was projecting a year before that, they were projecting 150,000. So they're only about a third of what they projected. And if you look at what they're projecting for Q4 2024, they're projecting like 200,000. So they're projecting like a 4 times increase in terms of future REO. Now, the problem is that if you go back over time and look at this quarter over quarter, that the projection keeps getting pushed out because we're not seeing it, right? But nobody's taking it away. So it's sitting there, right? And people are wondering, when does it start to flow through? And we think it's, I understand it's only March 2024, but we really think it's not going to be sooner than 2025, especially with it being an election year, that we think that things could get pushed out beyond the timelines they're projecting now. But the potential REO, the number of properties that are seriously delinquent, we're seeing more and more. We're seeing more that come vacant, but we're not seeing a huge material impact that we think that people on this call would want to see this year.
I think all of us on this call understand that. Just hang in there, right? It's just
it's more of it's more of like it's like the evolution versus a revolution of REO, right? We're seeing more, we're seeing an uptick, but it's going to take some time to get to REO. What we're doing at Single Source, and I think one of the benefits of partnering with us is we are getting new clients. I mean, we boarded new clients last year. I would guess the clients we boarded last year would be the envy, of the industry in a lot of different ways. And even if it wasn't for REO, if we got boarded at a big client, there's REO there, and we're going after it. That's, you look at some of our clients now, like Fannie Mae, we got in for valuations, probably 2012. And then in 2015, we established a good track record. We got into field services. We're trying to do the same thing in other clients, whether they will hire us as an REO outsourcer, or if they have an in-house department, or we can get Darren in to get the listings that way too. We're trying to do both. So we are growing. We're hiring again, which is exciting. And then I know, Darren, you have a lot of exciting projects going on in the single family rental space as well. So I think we're between the two of us, we're kind of hitting it on both sides, where I think we both feel really good about what our inventory will look like in terms of growth. But I think that's more specific to us than the industry probably at this point.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, right? It is the evolution of the whole space. And we had to pivot over to the SFR space, honestly, just because of necessity, and start doing some inspections and different things with them. Next thing you know, we're doing dispositions. So that organic growth based on just getting into the conversation with these guys is helping us expand and drive additional business. And I think it's no surprise to all of us that it's going to be post-election that we see. I mean, I know they just some of the forbearance COVID situations have been extended again. So I mean, they just continue to kick that can down the road just to push it back. So it's coming. It'll be here sooner rather than later. But with that, Eric, let's open up. Unless Brian, you have anything else you want to add before we open up some questions?
No, I think we get our questions. Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
sounds
gonna
good.
go ahead and let Emily read the questions from the chat. It's probably the easiest way.
All right. James has a question. Are single source assets through ADR or ResNet?
So the way that the flow works is if you're getting you can get an asset from ADR that is not a single source asset, right? So the answers can sometimes be both. But typically, if it's a single source asset, if it's one of our clients that we have under contract, the actual referral will come via ADR. Part of, that helps our asset managers focus on the marketing tasks, on the listing of the property. So the assignment will come from ADR. ResNet is actually a third-party software that the banks will have us use. So ResNet is just software. So basically the client might use single source in another firm. And the customer won't want to log into the single source system and the competitor system. If it's LRES, let's say, for example, right? The customer wants to log into ResNet, and then they can see both their portfolio and our portfolio kind of in the same spot. So ResNet is really just the technology or the software. The referral is from single source.
Yeah, and to expand on that as well, I mean, the platforms you definitely want to be involved or in at this point are with single source. You have ResNet. They also have their own proprietary system, with Property Smart. We work through Bid on Homes and we work through Acceleris. So those are the four main platforms that you want to make sure that you have, your information in.
Okay, great.
Let me just interject real quick. If any agent on this call is not sure if their profile is set up correctly, send me an email and we can have a call. Just that's a question comes up a lot. And as far as Property Smart, that's something our asset managers would be setting up for you. That's not something you would set up for yourself. So again, if you have a question about that, send me an email. I'll throw it in the chat and we can talk more about that. Yeah, Emily.
Okay, Wendy Martin had a question. Hi, Brian. For years, we were told if we completed tasks, we had a 1 in 3 chance of getting the REO listing because single source wasn't the only company servicing these clients. Is that still the case?
I think what Wendy's asking is that was I bet that was a reference to when we were doing a lot of work with NationStar, where there were 3 companies that were servicing the same client. I'm thinking that's what that reference is to. And I would say that changes quite a bit. If you look at C-Link, for example, is one of our largest clients right now. There's 2 vendors. There's single source, and the other one is Altisource, that both are our REO companies there. So I would say, because volumes have been lower, the most important things, tasking is very important. Transparency is very important, and communicating is very important, because the asset managers, if you make their job easier, chances are the next one's going to come to you. There are metrics that we historically looked at, whether it was days vacant or average days listed, things like that. Those are still really important, but we also understand, because volumes are so low, you could get a really tough asset, and that could screw up your score for a long time. So it really is a lot of probably the more intangible things, like the tasking, that helps get the next asset.
Okay, great. And Eloise asked, I read Florida leads and foreclosure filings in the month of February. Do you support that information?
Could you read that again?
Yeah, she said, I read that Florida leads and foreclosure filings in the month of February. Do you support that information?
I think we can expand upon that, because that's kind of an open.
Yeah.
I don't know what she's referencing either. Is that like a document that just states some kind of volume as far as the filing numbers are up?
Yeah, there
Eloise,
are
on?
reports that came out that they're tricking up, but problem, especially in a judicial state, is it takes a while for that to filter through, and to correlate that to REO, it's too early in the game right now, primarily due to the fact that so few of these actually make it all the way through, either between the loss mitigation programs, which have intensified again this year through government intervention, and then also you have the investors that are still taking a lot of these properties at sale before they ever make it into the REO. So it's yeah, while the trend is there, I don't think we're going to Brian's earlier comment, I don't think we're going to see any uptick in, this year for sure.
Okay, great. And then Mark asked, if we do a BPO for single source, does ADR get notified? So if they get the asset, we get the first chance at the listing.
Yeah, so we're separate locations than ADR, but all of the people know each other. So if you're doing BPOs for single source, there a lot of our BPO clients right now, there is not necessarily a direct correlation from that BPO property that it's going to become a listing. The benefit is that if you do a good job for that department, for Cullen and that team, they're communicating with Darren and his team on their preferred agents. We definitely view that as a competitive advantage for us, that if an agent is doing a good job for us on the valuation side, we want to make sure that they get listings. But I don't want to be, I don't want to mislead in any way that that a single source BPO, you're going to see a listing on that same property. I think that's probably more likely on the ADR side. And I'll let Barry or Darren handle that, where they could see an inspection or a BPO that could lead to a listing on the same address.
Yeah, I mean, that is spot on with how we try to run things on our side, because we do try to keep the agent tied to the asset. We find a lot of value in the fact that you already know it and you've already got some information about it, and especially on some of the inspection pieces that I'll let Barry jump in and expand upon, because a lot of the pieces, the end-to-end pieces deal with inspections and some other parts of the workflow of that we deal with that honestly is very, very important to the whole process. Without the inspection, we don't get the BPO, we don't get the work, bottom line. So that's tied to the whole workflow when it comes to ADR and our workflows. And I'll before I let Barry jump in, on the single source side, when they do send over these assets, their team talks to our team and we do place all their properties. When that happens, they are giving us instructions if there is a preferred or an agent that's being requested, or someone tied to that property. They are letting us know that. So there is a piece to that. But with that, Barry, I'll let you expand on the workflow.
Yeah, thanks, Darren. So on our side of the business, we have a lot of, as Darren alluded to earlier, clients in the SFR space or in the purchase leaseback space. So what you will see, and it's not automatic, there's no ratio, it would be impossible to give you a ratio because we do a lot of cash for keys programs for clients. Does that mean that they just put it back into the rental pool, or are they selling the asset? Things that we have no control over. So it's really difficult to put an exact ratio on that. It's impossible to put an exact ratio. But that being said, there's a heavy correlation to doing inspection work, doing cash for keys, doing lockouts, that type of work that does tie to that asset. And if you've been performing well, communicating, as Darren mentioned several times, and you're staying on top of that asset, in all likelihood, you're going to get that asset. But again, we don't have control over it. If they put it back into the rental market or something to that effect, we lose out on the opportunity too. Because trust me, we're doing a lot of that work as well, and we would love to see it, be rewarded with a listing. But unfortunately, we don't control, what our clients choose to do there.
Okay, great. Yeah, I don't see any more questions in the chat box, so it looks like we're all caught up.
I'd just go ahead and invite anybody, if you just wanted to ask a question, because maybe it's, too much to type in the chat, but it will take another 5 minutes or so if anybody wants to open up their mic and just ask a quick question, because this is a rare opportunity for you guys to really have the chance to speak with Brian and Darren and Barry about these different topics.
Eric, I'll fill in here. One thing that I know we're trying to get at one of these sessions, as well as maybe even doing an on-site a training with one of our unique buyers and sellers that we deal with, kind of in the purchase leaseback space. So that will. We'll probably have one of those sessions here in the next month or two, where we'll have those individuals come on, kind of tell you about those programs, because obviously everybody wants to know, hey, how do you get involved? How do you stay involved? And how do you get listings at the end of the day? And the beautiful part of some of these purchase leaseback players is it's a double-ended deal. If you can find the seller, on the front end, you get that transaction, and then it goes back into the rental pool for a year, 2 years, typically at most. And then we get the listing back on it at that time. So just a fantastic opportunity for us as well as our agents. But we'll be talking more about that in detail in future calls.
Yeah, that's a good point, Barry. I know we've been having those discussions. Some of these clients that we're working with now do have unique needs, and we're trying to get that information out to the agents as much as possible. And if anybody's going to Velocity next in 2 weeks down in Nashville, we have some breakouts that you guys could absolutely meet up with us during those times and talk a little bit more about that. But thanks for bringing that up, Barry. I think a couple more things showed up in the chat there, Emily. What are we looking at here?
Yeah, Chad asked, so I have noticed with Bid on Homes that we will complete tasks either on time or days early, but then I go back and look at the completed tasks a week or two later, and they have went from showing they were completed on the actual date to showing as being completed days or even a week plus late.
Yeah, I think that's a different topic.
That's a
with the
different,
Bid on
yeah.
Homes, but
We're so everybody knows in the bid on homes process, we're drinking from a fire hose with a new client right now, and we're throwing so much stuff at them that I think I've had 5 calls with them already today, just working through some of the different releases and pushes that we're going through. Your typical platform, so everybody knows, does a push once every 2 weeks, maybe. We're doing pushes like every night for new build outs and new things. So it doesn't surprise me, Chad, what you're putting out there. Just bear with us as we work through that. And and we'll continue to itemize out the situations like that, and we'll continue to correct them. But we're just trying to, at this point, our priority is to get these properties listed, get them under contract, and get them closed. And this is just that's one small. So that's how we're itemizing it, how we're dealing with it. The priority first is getting through offers, getting through listings, and getting this property's marketed and under contract. So, but thanks for the tip. I mean, again, I think we'll probably circle up, Eric, at a different time on some of this stuff and be able to say, hey, give us an itemized list. Because I know Jared's on this call right now. I see him, and he brought up some stuff about just the time it's taken to get some responses back. And I mean, we appreciate the feedback. I mean, honestly, we're trying to better what we do because it helps us continue to drive additional volumes to you guys. So the feedback's, it's warranted. Let us know. And then we're going to do our best to get it corrected and get it fixed. So
yeah, I might even make the suggestion, Darren, that maybe next month we just do a Bid on Homes type of mastermind or something like that. We can talk about it. But any other questions that we have for Brian while we have Brian on the call? This is a really rare and unique opportunity. I don't want you guys to go away with any questions unanswered. So, and I really appreciate your time, Brian. This has really been fantastic for me, having worked with the company for the last 6 years. I feel like I understand things a whole lot better. But any last questions? Going once. I'm typing my email in the chat right now. So
it was such a great presentation, Brian, that no one has any questions.
How about you, Jeff? Any
Thank
questions from Jeff?
No, I mean, honestly, like I learned a lot. I mean, I've been doing this for 26 years, as most know, and I know a lot about REO, but I was able to get some nuggets out of this and some information I didn't know. So thank you so very much, Brian. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So, all right. Well, with that, I think I'll end off the call. I did record. I started recording a little bit late. We were about 5 minutes into the call when I hit the record button. So, I had a couple people that were supposed to remind me. But anyhow, I jest. Thanks
Sorry.
it's okay. Uh, thanks for coming on, everybody. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Brian, again for lending your expertise and time to the call. I know you have a busy schedule, and this was really valuable information for all of us. I really, really appreciate it. I'll stay on for a couple minutes after the call if anybody has any questions for me. I don't have anything till 2, but I wanted to call now. So thanks for coming on, everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Brian.
guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yep.
guys.
Thanks, Darren.
See y'all.
Bye.
Mm.